Shokai, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, hello everybody. We're now going to have a short service, including the reading of the differently abled ancestors. And you're all invited to recline or sit in a chair or do anything that you need to do. Make yourselves comfortable for Zazen. After that, we're going to have Kinhin, and then Jacqueline will give us a Dharma talk. And then one more session of Zazen. So let's begin.
The heart of the perfection of Great Wisdom Sutra. Avalokita's Bodhisattva, awakened one of compassion in Prajnaparamita, the deep practice of perfect wisdom, perceived for the emptiness of all five conditions and was free of suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form, form is precisely emptiness, emptiness is precisely form, sensations, perceptions, formations, consciousness are also like this. O Shariputra, all things are expressions of emptiness, not born, not destroyed, not sane nor pure, neither waxing nor waning. Thus, emptiness is not form, not sensation nor perception, not formation nor consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, nor object of mind, no realm of sight, no realm of consciousness, no ignorance, no end to ignorance, no old age and death, no cessation of old age and death, no suffering nor cause or end to suffering, no path, no wisdom, and no gain, no gain. Thus bodhisattvas live this prajna paramita with no hindrance of mind, no hindrance, therefore no fear. Far beyond all delusions, nirvana is already here. All past, present, and future Buddhas live this prajna paramita and realize supreme and complete enlightenment. Therefore, know that Prajna Paramita is the sacred mantra, the luminous mantra, the supreme mantra, and the incomparable mantra by which all things suffering is cleared. This is no other than truth. Therefore, set forth this Prajna Paramita mantra. Set forth this mantra and proclaim. Gyate, gyate, hara gyate, haraso gyate, boji soata, hanya shingyo. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, reality resisting right here now. In reciting the heart of the perfection of Great Wisdom Sutra, We dedicate our sincere efforts to the successful generations of Buddhas and ancestors who transmitted the flame, through whose different bodies and special minds, so often misunderstood by the many, those who have been met with exclusion or fear, those for whom the path was filled with obstacles and barriers, and those we honor, those whose entrance was so often denied and halls once barred. Successful generations of Buddhas and ancestors who transmitted the flame, the Venerable Lakunataka Badya Daosho, whose body was bent and who met with scorn, but who persisted throughout without resentment and with praise by the Buddha for the highest attainment. The Bodhisattva as baby Prince Daosho, who lived in a body without hearing, speech, or free limb, in protest of injustice and cruelty to this world. Jukutara Daosho, bent of back, she cleaned her own heart and was praised by the Buddha as most learned. Chakapupala Daosho, without sight, he saw clearly the true effect of malice and of killing, which most cannot see. Patakara Daosho, at the deaths of the family she loved, left emotionally troubled and living homeless in the streets, a victim of derision from passers-by, the Buddha showed her the true path and the true home through impermanence. Sanu Daosho, prone to fits, then little understood. Seizures once thought as evil curses, he opened all our eyes. Ganjin Daosho, courageous and learned without sight, he came from China to Japan to bring Buddhist teachings and arts of healing. Supa Buddha Daosho, living with leprosy, he teaches not to judge by appearance or false beauty, with many would turn away. The Moso Daosho, without sight, barred from priesthood, but with lutes in hand, they brought the teachings to others in music and tales. Arya Chudapanthaka Daosho, slow to read and learn in words, such that others gave up. The Buddha taught him to polish without and sweep his mind within. Toju Raisho Daosho, quick to forget, the slow student who persevered, a protector of Buddhism in difficult times, mender of sandals as his only gift, yet becoming the abbot of great temples. Those many sentient beings, all teachers in their way, who have struggled with addictions, confusion, depression, and mental conditions, often misunderstood. And to all the many other honored ones, same yet diverse beings through the generations to whom the doors were closed, or whose names have been forgotten or left unsaid, we now seek to welcome all with the doors open and the halls unbarred. We especially dedicate our sincere efforts to Shakyamuni Buddha, honored one, the historical Buddha and teacher, and to those ancestral teachers. Eihei Dogen, honored one. Soji Keizan, honored one. All successive honored ones up until Suigaku Rempo, honored one, and Gudo Wafo, honored one. And to all other honored ones throughout history, same yet diverse honored ones whose names have been forgotten or left unsaid. We also dedicate those efforts to the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and to all awakened ones and teachers in all places and times. We especially seek tranquility and well-being for all creatures now suffering or ill in health. May they be serene through their ills. May their lives be at peace and wisdom pervade the darkness of ignorance. We dedicate our hopes and aspirations to all victims of war and violence and natural events, to the injured and to all families touched by these tragedies, to the healing of hatred in all countries and among all peoples, to the wisdom and compassion of our world leaders, to the peace of the world and harmony of all beings. Thus, Let the harmful effects of actions, words, and thoughts be dispelled and compassion bloom in perpetual spring. May we all realize the enlightened way together. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, Maha Prajna Paramita.
Again? Kinhan?
We will now have Zazen and a talk. I just need to remove my cat. This is how we roll here. Nice thing about it being late in the evening, at least here it is I'm too tired to be nervous, but I'll try not to put everybody to sleep. And I kind of pick up where Bjoken left off. No spoilers, but I'll read you my verse first and my lines from Shutu's Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage. It's the 4th verse, and it says, "Perishable or not, the original master is present, not dwelling south or north, east or west. Firmly based on steadiness, it can't be surpassed. A shining window below the green pines, jade palaces or vermilion towers can't compare with it." So the first line, perishable or not, the original master is present. I think we decided that perishable, yes, the hut will perish, and yet it won't perish because nothing ever perishes. But the original master is present. So she too is talking about an original master. So I spent the last week, it's Thanksgiving in the United States, and I spent much of the week traveling and went to see families for the holidays. And I live in upstate New York, and I took the train down into New York City, and then the railroad out to Long Island to where my family lives, and back and forth. And so it was really pretty fertile ground to let this passage percolate and take roots and grow during that time. So who is the original master? That was the first thing I was contemplating. Obviously, it was amazing to me saying who, how many identities I had over the week. I left a place where I'm mom and doctor. And then when I went visiting, in some places I was a daughter, I was a sister, I was an aunt. I was introduced to some new family members and their relatives, and they probably made some perceptions of me by what I do and what I look like and where I come from, which is rural area as opposed to where they live. And in a lot of places I went over the week, I was just an unknown. I was just, there with my coat and scarf and my red-haired daughter and a big obnoxious suitcase. And, another point, I was a standing with my daughter as a fan outside a theater, waiting for an autograph, and, you know, literally packed like sardines in the crowd so that I couldn't see anything. Another point, I was a passenger waiting at the information booth at the train station. And some of the people I interacted with were really excited to see me. Some of my nieces and nephews that I hadn't seen for a long time, and, you know, wanted to introduce me to their children I hadn't seen in ages. And some people were really not excited to see me at all. You know, the people that saw me coming at the information booth and coming into the train with my big suitcase. So in all of these I's and me's, then they're all perishable, obviously. So who's the original master? Can the original master be a traveler with a ticket, the great aunt, the Buddhist priest giving a talk? Not without really you guys, not without my parents, not without my nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews, not without the performer up on the stage that we're waiting for the autograph for, not without the people working in the restaurants, not without the city, and not without all the people in the city. And it just keeps going, you know, the parents of the entertainers, all the beings past and present who had to travel down on the train for work and visiting and holidays, and all of it, you know, the people that built the theaters and the railroads and the houses and just the places for us to stay. So if you're sensing a theme, you know, this is, I listened to Bjorken before and I was like, oh, I must be kind of on the right track, because this sounds familiar to what I was going to talk about. But the answer is, if every single one of those beings and circumstances were not present, it wouldn't be today and here and now in this world. And the original master needs every one of those things. I think that she too is pointing to all of these things are necessary, and they'll all be born or built, and they'll die or degrade. But enlightenment, the Buddha's enlightenment, the absolute, it pervades it all, pervades the whole universe. So the next line, not dwelling south or north, east or west. So if all of those things have to be present, then could there be a place in particular where they all exist, where we exist, where we're going, where we're coming from? I mean, every time and every direction really can only exist in the relationship with something else. So as I'm coming down on the train, I'm going from north to south, but how could I go south if I hadn't been north? And exactly what is north and south? And how could I be a great aunt to the little new baby if I weren't a daughter and a sister first? Then I couldn't be a great aunt. You know, we can't dwell in any of those things. There's no reality to, no real existence in any of it. It's all relative to everything else. I mean, certainly we have our fixed views and our labels, but anything, you know, can any of it really just exist by itself without being in relation to something else? I thought of, you know, all the moving and the walking, and, you know, what about walking? You know, what do we think about when we think about walking? We walked here and we walk there, but when we hear the term walking, we automatically think of that, a being of some sort with feet that's trying to go somewhere. But Dogen said, mountains walk. He said, mountains walk. So to quote, I have a quote from his Mountains and Rivers Sutra. Staying in words and staying in phrases is not the speech of liberation. There is a state that has got free from states like these. It is expressed, the blue mountains are constantly walking, and the East Mountain moves on water. We should master it in detail. So it must be pretty important because Dogen is telling us we should really master this mountains walking thing. And then how do we do that when all we have are these words and phrases that we're trying to use? How do we go beyond the words and phrases to a place where mountains walk and move on water? One of the ways I think we do it is we recite the Heart Sutra every day when I mean, that pretty much takes care of all of it. If you listen to the Heart Sutra, there's no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, object of mind, no path, no wisdom, no gain, no hindrance of mind. So we're negating everything. We're saying there's none of all this. But that means there's really just no intrinsic existence of all of these things. I mean, how liberating is that? They're really just things because our senses are feeding us information and our minds are calling it something. And it's a lot easier to release all our views on these things if we realize that none of those exist without the complete opposite of it. So can mountains walk? I mean, can there be up or down in outer space? Can there be anarchy without oligarchy? This morning we heard the identity of the relative and absolute, which Byoken also mentioned as Shitu's other famous poem. And it says, light and darkness are not one, not two, like the foot before and the foot behind in walking. So the foot behind and the foot before is both walking. So mountains walk. But when we ring the bell, it requires all of that. It requires the bell, a striker, the minds of the sitters, at the very least, but it also requires those who practice zazen throughout all the ages, those who invented the bell, made bells out of metal. You could go on forever. There's nothing that doesn't include, and yet we still ring the bell and get up at the end of zazen. We look at maps, we look at schedules, we try to get our destination on time. We go to the birthday parties. We try to be kind, relieve as much of the suffering around us as we can. And how do we do that? So coming from a place where it all exists and it's all necessary, every last bit of it, why don't we just say, well, the heck with it. It is what it is. And I don't need to do anything because, it's all good this way. And I'm not gonna try to help. It's not that simple. And when I first got on the Long Island Railroad with my big obnoxious suitcase full of gifts and wine and everything else, I put it up with my daughter, helped me shove it in the overhead storage because that's the rules that you're supposed to do. It was a packed full train. Actually, we missed the first train because no one would let us on with the big suitcase. It was packed to the doors and we were trying to get in and they're all just like up against the door. So we had to wait for the more expensive and less crowded train. And then when we got to our stop, my daughter had sat a ways away because there weren't that many seats. So I'm trying to get my suitcase down and every seat is taken and everybody's watching me struggle with it. And there's these macho guys there. Nobody's looking up from their phones at all. I mean, they're just completely ignoring me, like trying to get the suitcase down off the thing. So finally this tiny little lady, smaller than me, gets up and starts to help me bring it down. And it comes down from over our heads. And I thought it was gonna like totally squish her there in the middle of the aisle, and she's like making really angry faces like, this is what I get, no good deed goes unpunished. And nobody else so much would look up, and that's the way it is on the train. But I had just done zazen on the train all the way down from upstate, so Uh, at the moment, really, I was really just more amused and kind of sorry and compassionate for all of those people on the train. Um, I mean, they just looked like they were suffering. You know, it was Black Friday, and it was the day before Thanksgiving. That's why it was so busy. Everybody was trying to get somewhere. But they were all like so absorbed in what they were doing. They're just trying to obsessively distract themselves from the life that was around them. You know, they had none of them seemed to really have any willingness to be where they were. They wanted to be somewhere else. But I had done Zazen on the train down, and you know, that put me in a place where uh, I knew what it was like to be them. Um, not just because I used to be them years ago before I started practicing, but because I probably was them that same day, that morning, maybe, you know, because no matter how much we practice, you know, we're always them, you know, our minds are always trying to come up with some way to distract us or take us away from what we want. I mean, I didn't want to have this big dumb bag. I was worried about missing the stop on the train, not getting it down fast enough, leaving something behind. You know, the whole trip, there was little things here and there, like we had to change our hotel room because the mattress smelled bad and then the heater didn't work. And, um, you know, there were all these little things. One other room was really dark and really noisy. But when I say that I had moments of disappointment, I mean, they were seconds. Because that's what practice does. It helps us let those things go before, uh, you know, we don't cling to them and let them grow. And, you know, we try not to distract ourselves and, you know, just go into our phone world. And, you know, instead my mind immediately went to gratitude for the shelter, you know, the transportation, just all the ingredients that I just talked about that were around me, that were such a miracle, that was getting me to where I was going. And of course, everybody knows, well, not everybody, maybe some of you, we've been reading Realizing Genja Koan by Shohaku Okamura in the book club, and we haven't got to the famous passage where he talks about Master Hotetsu and the fan. The monk came in and asked him, it's said that the nature of air is to be ever present, and there's no place that air cannot reach. Why then does the master use a fan? The master said, you only know that the nature of air is to be ever present, but you have not understood the fact that there's no place the air cannot reach. The monk said, what is the meaning of the principle, there is no place the air cannot reach? At this, the master just carried on using the fan, and the monk prostrated himself. The real experience of Buddhism, the vivid behavior of the Buddhist tradition is like this. Someone who says that because the air is ever present, we need not use a fan, or that even when we do not use a fan, we can still feel the air, does not know ever presence and does not know the nature of air. Because the nature of air is to be ever present, the behavior of Buddhists makes the earth manifest itself as gold and ripens the Milky Way into delicious cheese. That's my favorite line. I love cheese. And that's what it can be if we practice. You know, the air is everywhere, but we have to fan it. We have Buddha nature, but we have to sit zazen and become awake to that, our nature. That's what we do when we do zazen. We wake up to where we are, whether it be somewhere we want to be or somewhere we'd rather not be. Instead of diving into distractions, you know, everybody's probably been doing that all day today. There's probably been moments for every single person of boredom, discomfort. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? I'd rather be doing something else. I hurt. I don't want this. But firmly based on steadiness, it can't be surpassed. So steadiness, our practice is based on steadiness. It's based on zazen, and that can't be surpassed, because when we're awake, when we sit down on our cushions and drop the north, south, east, and west, and we're just awareness, then we're liberated from all that. You know, we can laugh at the silly people on the train and, you know, thank the poor lady you almost killed with your suitcase. And, you know, we just have to stop and look around us and let the universe catch up with us, and you know, we're free. That's what Dogen's trying to tell us. The next line, a shining window below the green pines. Jade palaces or vermilion towers can't compare with it. And that resonated too. You know, all of us are, you know, we tend to in Buddhism, and some of that's the Japanese roots, really gravitate to nature. And, you know, the whole, just like Byoken said, the whole idea of running off to a hidey hole beneath the pines is attractive. And so when you first read that line, we get that sort of, oh yeah, you know, jade towers or vermilion palaces can't possibly compare with the beauty of nature. And I've been pretty lucky, I am lucky that I've been able to experience some pretty fancy human-built places in my life. And in New York, walking around, boy, there's plenty of jade towers and vermilion palaces. There's everything is bigger, better, the most elite everything. You know, if you have enough money, you can pretty much find anything that humanity can create. Skyscrapers are towering, and there's the ornate theaters and the elaborate cathedrals and the huge museums and the architecture, and you just stand there and it's all around. And where I live, it's interesting. New York is about 2.5 hours, the city, 2.5 hours south, and the Adirondack Wilderness is about 2.5 hours north. It's one of the reasons I moved here years ago, thinking, you know, they're both within visiting distance. So are they the same or different? The Adirondack Park with its wilderness, where you can feel close to Mother Earth. You might not, if you're backpacking, you might not, in some places, you won't see another person sometimes for days. And you're kind of reduced to your bare existence. But I feel like the homeless people on the streets of New York are kind of in a similar situation. You know, it's maybe almost harder for them to get food and water and shelter and warmth than somebody in the forest. The universe has been working on the mountains and forests and rivers for a long time. Humans have conquered quite a bit of it. But is all our art and our architecture and our cement as magnificent as the mountains and forests? And of course, there's not a straight answer to that, because I actually think it's a trick question. I think there's a tease here that she too is drawing us to compare these things with this line, because like Byoken was saying, it's all there. One can't be without the other. You know, we just talked about dwelling, that nothing can be in one place without relation to something else. You know, without the raw materials of the stone and the mountains and the rivers, the nourishment and shelter and warmth of our predecessors and our ancestors, we couldn't have created any of those buildings or any of that art. We're inextricably linked to the pines and the light. So which one is more wondrous? Is one more deserving of our care, our sense of wonder, than another? It's funny, I was trying to go back and find it. Somebody had mentioned that in the forum, and I couldn't find it. I didn't know if it was in the Simple Living thread or one of the precepts, but everybody was talking about their walking in nature experiences. And then that member said something like, well, there was an old barrel, a rusty barrel by the river, or, you know, was that beautiful too? And sort of left that there as a little teaching. And you know, sometimes those discussions come up and we all talk about our wonder of nature, but then what about, somebody says, what about that old windmill, or the broken down cottage, or, you know, things that we see the impermanence in. You know, Zenni's like images that depict impermanence. And then someone might say, well, I found a dandelion between the crack in the sidewalk in the city, and I thought that was beautiful. So I was thinking about that, and I was kind of doing what Bjorken was doing, and like looking things up and surfing and looking for relations. And I found a passage from Hungzhi Jungjui. Some people, I've heard it pronounced Hungji, but Jundo says it's Hungzhi Jungjui. And he's actually, well, the quote is from Cultivating the Empty Field, which is a translation from Hungzhi by Daniel Tigan Layton. And Hungzhi actually wrote the book of the koans and the book of equanimity, which we've studied, we come back to from time to time in the forum. And he was a Chinese Chan monk. And this book, amongst other writings of his, were really influential in the Soto school. And he actually could trace his lineage back to Shitu. So that's kind of how I link the two together, because those ideas, these ideas that we're talking about that are becoming a theme here, you can trace it from Shitu to Hungzhi to us. And I feel like this paragraph I found in this translation, Cultivating the Empty Field, really was a good answer when I was looking at, you know, what defines wonder? What is our wonder in these places, the nature and the city, and the comparison of the two and the unity of the two. And this quote reads, investigating wonder. In clarity, the wonder exists with spiritual energy shining on its own. It cannot be grasped, and so cannot be called being. It cannot be rubbed away, and so cannot be called non-being. Beyond the mind of deliberation and discussion, depart from the remains of the shadowy images. Emptying oneself of self-existence is wondrous. This wonder is embodied with a spirit that can be reenacted. The moon mind with its cloud body is revealed straightforwardly in every direction without resorting to signs or symbols. Radiating light everywhere, it responds appropriately to beings and enters the sense dusts without confusion. Overcoming every obstruction, it shines through every empty dharma. Leaving discriminating conditioning, enter clean, clear wisdom, and romp and play in samadhi. What could be wrong? This is how one must genuinely investigate the essence. So what does all that mean? Beyond the mind of deliberation and discussion, depart from the remains of shadowy images. That sense of wonder is beyond our words and description. It's beyond jade palaces and vermilion towers and comparing it with beautiful shining windows and green pines. And the best part is this wonder is embodied with a spirit that can be reenacted, which means even though these realities are completely different and unique, when we're standing there underneath the skyscraper, or we see an amazing performance of another human in the theater, or we're out in the mountains camping, or if we're in the hospital, you know, we can empty ourselves of self-existence, and it's wondrous, and we can reenact that. So I think it's a very encouraging and uplifting conclusion that she too is really pointing at. So I thought that was a good way to leave the first day of retreat tonight, with that sense that maybe we've gone beyond all the likes and dislikes and the discomforts and the labels and symbols and comparisons, and cultivate that sense of wonder. And I know I've had the sense of wonder quite a bit, especially now with Zoom, that we can actually see everybody that's here. And I definitely have a sense of wonder that this piece of technology that's human created has connected us all this way to do this. And I think that embodies the wonder of interbeing more than any talk possibly could. So thank you. Does anybody have any comments, questions? My cat will answer them. He's gone off. Going once, going twice. All right, I think we have Kim Hin now. Oh, wait. Takeshi?
I just saw that Brad had raised his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see.
It's okay.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, just maybe a question, comment. I think it's
Sure.
beautiful talk. Thank you so much for one. And two, I think what really struck me was when you'd mentioned seeing some of the behavior around the people in the train, and how ultimately you brought that back to yourself and you said, well, that was me earlier today, and it might be me later today. And I think probably all of us, I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone, but certainly for me, I can relate to that in so many levels, because our nature continues to arise, and our habit pattern and those embedded old karma. So that was a really interesting and pointed observation, and I think I just wanted to thank you for that, because I think it really hit home, because I'm sure we can all relate to a capacity that our journeys are long, and yeah, our habits are there often. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why we all practice here together and fan ourselves with that fan, because it's the temptation to slide back into, that's always going to be there.
Thank you.
Anything else? Sekishi?
Oh, I was just going to say that to kind of add on to that too, that I know a couple of us in this Zoom window in the past couple of weeks have talked about why the precepts. And I think, right, that speaks to it perfectly, as every one of us has been the, person glued to the phone or, the book or whatever. And we've been in our own little borrowed consciousness and totally not been part of this great dance around us. So yeah, our nature comes roaring forward.
And in a place like that where you're with so many people and they're not awake, and yet you can relate to that. Like you said, you really, we all know where that place is, and we could all be there in a second. No matter how long we've practiced, we can all get there. And the precepts, yeah, I mean, they help a ton, because I've likened it in the forum before to, the absolute and enlightenment kind of has that dark side where you could say, well, just nothing matters. But it does matter, because if you face things with the spirit of the Eightfold Path and the precepts and the Four Noble Truths, it gets you to that place where you can sit and be awake and then know what to do with that. And And that's the Buddha's prescription for less suffering. And you want to relieve other people's suffering because you see them and you know what it's like to be them. And it's like, hey, it's not so bad, guys. Smile, lighten up. Or if it is that bad, then, come on out and cry and, don't bury yourself. And, there's a shoulder here for you. And, there's a different way to be.
Me again. I just, I think this is an Uchiyama Roshi thing. I'm not sure, but anyway, in one of the books I've read, one of the Zen greats of the last generation or two had this expression that they liked that I really love, which is everything you meet is your life, right? Like we don't want to meet it sometimes. Sometimes we really, really, really don't want to meet it, but literally everything you meet is your life. And so you may as well meet it.
Right. Yep. And there's nothing like that. I mean, when you're in a hospital, and I had all of Tree Leaf there in my hospital bed with me. Buddha's enlightenment was nice, but it wasn't the same as having you all in my pocket there and being able to share Zazen and Zazenkai while I was in that hospital bed. It just happened to be a 4-hour Zazenkai, and it was a lifeline. So it really does, when you're in that place where you have no choice but to meet it, this all makes a big difference. Maybe I was thinking, I'd rather be on this train than in that hospital bed. So pretty much any kind of cold or nasty smelling hotel room or train packed full of people, or if you've had other crises happen in your life, then you can be like, yeah, I'll take it. Anybody else? All right. We'll do a little bit of Kinhin. Shokai is now going to recite the metta chant, and we'll do a little zazen and then the closing verses.
Everybody hear me? Good. In keeping with the topic here, I thought I might do a little fanning. Actually, I'll be talking a little bit about Hawaii, and it reminds me of a fellow that he didn't. We've talked about pronunciation. We had a lot of pronunciations in different Chinese and Indian names today, and this fella wasn't quite sure how to pronounce Hawaii or Hawaii. So for years he'd really wondered about this, and so he finally got to take a trip to Hawaii, and he jumped off the plane and ran up to the first fellow that he meets, and he says, "Tell me, sir," he says, "I've always wondered, how do you pronounce the name of the state? Is it Hawaii or Hawaii?" And the gentleman says, "Oh, of course, it's Hawaii." "Well," he says, "that's great." He says, "I've wondered about that for so long." And the gentleman says, he says, "Thank you very much." And the gentleman says, "You're welcome." Okay. We've been for eons being told to follow our heart, listen to our heart, speak from your heart, and that's great. But how do you do that? And we don't really get to do it sometimes. Recently, about 30 years ago, 1991, a physiologist in Dalhousie University in Halifax found that the heart has a collection of neurons. It has about 40,000 in a ganglia in the heart muscle. We'd always, been told that the heart is a muscle. It's a pump. It has four chambers and 4 sets of valves, and it pumps blood from the body to the lungs and from the lungs to the body. And that's about it. And yet we knew that there was an electrical system. There's a node and it fires and makes it go lub-dub. Well, finding this ganglion in the heart muscle, they realized that the heart communicates in 6 different ways with the brain. It's physically through the vagus nerve, and physically through the nerves that go up the spine to the amygdala and the medulla. And it also secretes hormones in the auricles, as well as having an electromagnetical field that radiates and radiates for quite far. Actually, it goes up to like 15 feet or something like that. And that's partly why we get to feel something in a group, because we're all sharing electromagnetic waves from the heart. The funny thing is that the Buddha told us this many, many, many years ago, 2,500 years ago, and showed us how to get around that by doing zazen, dropping the ego. With the discovery of this in the early 90s and through the 90s up to 2000, they've developed ways of reinforcing this relationship between the heart and the brain. And exercises that you can do. And I just thought I'd like to try a little experiment here, just so you can get an idea of how easy it is to focus on a part of the body. I want everybody to think about your left toe, your left big toe. Okay, now wiggle it. Easy, right? Easy. It's easy to focus on a part of the body. So how do you do the heart? Well, here's another thing. Put your hand over your heart, close your eyes, and think of or visualize a nice, fuzzy, warm experience from your memory. Something relaxing, something loving. Okay. One I use is my late wife Lillian and I are standing on a bridge on the beautiful island of Kauai, in Hawaii, by the way, and it's a bridge goes over a gorge, and to the left is twin waterfalls, and the sun is just at the right angle, and you can see a rainbow in the mist. And on the other side of the road, you look down about maybe 40, 50 feet, and the surface of the quiet pond at the base of the falls, and there's a fella on a paddleboard. He's just very gently, peacefully crossing the pond. Okay, now that you have that in gear, let's spread some loving kindness. We'll do the metta verses. First, we say the first set of verses towards ourself. May I be free from suffering. May I feel safe and still. May I be free from enmity. May I be loving, grateful, and kind. May I be healthy and at ease with all my ills. And may I be at peace, embracing all conditions of life. Next, we say this for a close loved one, he or she. May they be free from suffering. May they feel safe and still. May they be free from enmity. May they be loving, grateful, and kind. May they be healthy and at ease with all their ills. And may they be at peace, embracing all conditions of life. Next, family, extended family, acquaintances. May they all be free from suffering. May they feel safe and still. May they be free from enmity. May they be loving, grateful, and kind. May they be healthy and at ease with all their ills, and at peace, embracing all conditions of life. And now we say it for a neutral person, someone you may just see in passing. A good person is, if you want, the cashier at the casino. May they be free from suffering. May they feel safe and still. May they be free from enmity. May they be loving, grateful, and kind. May they be healthy and at ease with all their ills. At peace, embracing all conditions of life. And now the difficult one, the one that maybe really needs this. So let's be really sincere. May they be free from suffering. May they feel safe and still. May they be free from enmity. May they be loving, grateful, and kind. May they be healthy and at ease with all their ills. and at peace, embracing all conditions of life. And now we'll say it for all sentient beings, the whole universe, including ourselves, completing the circle. May we all be free from suffering. May we feel safe and still. May we all be free from enmity. May we be loving, grateful, and kind. May we be healthy and at ease with all our ills, and at peace, embracing all conditions of life. Thank you. We'll now have a short zazen. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, remembering what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, for they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons or vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself to others, you may become vain and bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career. However humble, it is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals. Everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially. Do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love. For in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, and do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You're a child of the universe. No less than the trees and the stars, you have a right to be here. And whether or not it's clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive her to be. And whatever your labors and aspirations in the busy confusion of life, maintain peace in your heart. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful and strive to be happy. We will now recite the verse of atonement and the 4 vows. All harmful acts, words, and thoughts ever committed by me since of old, on account of beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and mind, now I atone for them all. To save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way non-attainable, to save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way non-attainable, to save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way non-attainable. So this concludes the first day of our 2019 Rohatsu retreat. I would like to thank everyone that has participated today. And there's been many, and it's wonderful to be able to see all of you. It's just great. Thanks for all of you for putting in the time, but a real special big on for the whole Sangha. A big thank you to Sekishi and Shoka for the great effort that they've put in over the last 6 or 8 weeks to get this new technology up and running and to get us to a point where we could actually do this. Thank you all. See you tomorrow.